Hi there viewers and welcome. We're in the heart of Soho today. We just saw this great shop called Sir Tom Baker. We saw the owner Tom outside and we said, listen, do you fancy a chat? And he said yes. So we're joined by Tom.
Hi.
Thanks for doing this at such short notice.
That's all right, pleasure. That's what makes Soho interesting.
How long have you been a tailor for?
Self-taught since the age of 7, and then that carried on till the age of 25 when I then went to Savile Row for 5 years until I was 30. I did 5 years at Hardy Amy's, and then I set up shop in Berwick Street initially in 1996. And then I took on this premises in 2008, which I'm just about to renew the lease. So I'm here for a considerable longer amount of time.
So business must be okay.
I don't know why the beginning of this year's just exploded. I've had some massive orders.
You must get some amazing, I'm just looking at some pictures, you must get some amazing clientele in here.
You do actually, that's the thing, because it's a shop that I say is quite individualistic in its spirit. It naturally acts as a magnet for people with a likewise, kindred spirit, and that includes a lot of pop stars and TV people, actors, city guys, oil traders, you name it.
You must have some stories to tell.
There's a few.
Who's the biggest rock star you've had?
There's a few, but it's got to be Robert Plant for my generation. He was just someone I stopped on the street actually in Soho and said hello to, and then we got chatting and he asked me what I did. And he said, oh, that's strange because we're out shopping for my son's wedding suit, so give us your card, we're going to come up and see you. And true to his word, he was up within about an hour. The son come back to order the suit 2 days later, and I got an invitation up to the wedding, went up to Robert Plant's farm in Worcestershire, and brilliant, really good, with proper human stuff.
A real feather in your cap.
It was a feather in my cap, and I've continued to make stuff for him. Recently I did the stuff he wore at the O2 gig, when they reformed for the Amatertigan concert. But then there's others, there's Keith Flint and, members of the Sex Pistols, Depeche Mode.
It has got a real rock and roll edge, this shop. My father wouldn't come in here and get his suit done, it's quite middle of the road.
You've got to kind of make your name somehow in tailoring above and beyond your technical ability, which of course I have because of the training I've received. Kids in their 30s and early 40s have got a bit of money to spend. As soon as they realise that I do a business suit, because that's how I trained, they like coming here because they don't necessarily have to walk out looking like a rock star, but they like going to that kind of place because it kind of makes them feel they're near the danger zone, but they can, get to work and not get sacked.
Do you still do all the work primarily yourself?
I would say I am in charge of the top end of the procedure, which namely is the cutting and the fitting. That's where the magic occurs, and of course the designing, where there's maybe a heavily design orientated commission, which I'm happy to accommodate. A lot of tailors shy away from anything they're not used to, whereas I actually will jump on that. I love it because that's a form of creative reward above and beyond getting paid for the order. I look after, as I say, what would be the criteria required to get the suit looking the way the customer imagines it to be on ordering, because some people not used to the process of having something made are concerned about sort of putting down a deposit on something they can't see.
Not tangible.
That's right, so it's my responsibility to not only fulfill their expectations but to surpass them, so that's what I aim for. So the cutting and the fitting is really the key thing. As for the making, I've got a great little team who trusts me with my technical ability, and I trust them with their sewing ability, so it works nicely.
Who knows, one day I've got good. Could you sort me out with something?
No, sir.
I'm quite conservative. Look, I'm I feel completely.
But you're only conservative because you haven't bothered stepping out. You know,
Yeah.
once you put a really nice suit on and you realise how many girls are going to start lusting off.
Do you think it's as easy as that?
It really is. It really is. There's no question about it. Guys forget that girls like a well-dressed man. I don't know where that's been lost in translation, but most of them like a guy with good shoes and a good suit and a good attitude.
If you weren't a tailor, what would you be?
Well, I'd hopefully be better than Mick Ronson and be in a band that was better than the Spiders from Mars, but that's quite a big thing to achieve. But yeah,
Well, we're talking, fantasy.
Fantasy. We're talking fantasy.
Yeah.
We're talking about someone Mick Ronson would go, wow, he plays
That
guitar
guy,
well.
that Tom.
And who David Bowie would frequent your gigs.
What's it like working in the heart of Soho?
I absolutely love it.
Do you feed off other creative?
Yeah, you do. As much as you're working hard and you've got your head down most of the day, you know that there's all this stuff on your doorstep, so that's actually very reassuring. And you'll meet people in their own given fields working also at a high level, whether it's jewelers, filmmakers, artists, restaurateurs, you name it, they're all here. It's kind of almost in the earth, because of the tradition of Soho.
Now, you've called your brand Sir Tom Baker. Borderline narcissistic, or?
I would say borderline practical. I don't know if you've heard of a guy called Ted Baker. What you got to do with a brand, and I've just done all this stuff instinctively because I didn't sort of set out and say I'm going to be like Christian Dior one day. You've got to get your name right from the beginning because you can't start chopping and changing further down the line. So I did that about 7-8 years ago, before I ever got the shop and before it sort of got to this stage. The Brits get it, they see the irony. I mean, I've only had grief once from a foreign customer, but I don't think he sort of shagged his wife off enough or something. It is a trademark. Yeah. One of my first heroes in life was Beethoven, and then I don't know if you've heard of a guy called Paganini, who's a very famous virtuoso violinist. These in a way were the rock and roll stars of the day, as was Mozart, even though it's classical music. Rock and roll didn't exist. And because I was brought up by an art dealer and I was brought up with classical music and in quite a bohemian way, but I was very much immersed in the arts. Then, of course, punk rock and roll came along, and I realised that if you marry the two, you've got a great product. So I've based the shop really on that sensibility.
Do you think it's something you have an affinity to, or a natural, perhaps, gift?
Probably a combination of the two, but I most certainly realised from an early age that this is what I was interested in doing, and I discovered that from the age of 7. And we used to go into the haberdashers, and I remember clearly going in there as a kid and being absolutely fascinated by this shop. It just, everything about it spoke to me. That was the beginning, I think, of the journey I've been on, and then that became me messing about, experimenting, and again in the mid-70s there was a lot of fashion related to rock music and I was involved in that, so it developed quite naturally, but I never actually took it seriously as a profession. But all I was doing was messing about, like making stuff.
Were your parents supportive?
My parents were supportive in the fact that my dad went, you're 16, fucking scruffing like out, fucking find out what life's about, get a job, find out how to make money, use your brains.
So it's almost like the antithesis of support. Like
it's hard love. Hard
yeah.
love, which is just brilliant, It's like you don't want it any other way. I most certainly wouldn't have wanted it any other way, because the quicker you learn how to stand on your own 2 feet, I think the more interesting in life you will have.
Yeah. Where would you want to be in the next 5 to 10 years?
A catwalk show, possibly in Paris, and then looking at opening up maybe a couple of more shops, one in Shanghai, which I've recently returned from Shanghai, but it's all in the, it's all hypothetical, so I'm careful not to talk too much about it, but I'm most certainly looking into all of it quite seriously.
Come down to Soho, get yourself a suit. I'm sure it's quite pricey, but worth it. I mean,
it's worth every penny. It's worth every penny.
You should really come down and see this place. It really is something. Have we got a website we can tell viewers?
Absolutely. It's www.tombakerlondon.com.
Thank you very much, Tom Baker.
Pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.